So there's kind of a quarantine right now. We're all stuck home, but that doesn't mean it's not time for min-maxing for fun and profit. My name is Tommy. Her name is Lucia. We're going to try something a little different today. Partially because, again, we're all stuck at home. Partially because as of this recording, also that's the coolest mug in the world, like 26 days, I think it is, we will have a house. And I guess this is what adults do when they get houses.
Chakra.
But it'll be really easy for us to do this if this ends up working really well. I want to try to turn these a little more, I don't want to say podcasty, but like open forum-y, I guess is the best way to say that. You understand what I'm trying to say, right? Tell the people what I'm trying to say.
Like more of a discussion, a conversation, instead of just like a lecture.
Instead of me telling you that Knife Masters are really good every week. Speaking of that, today, at the request of Mr. Nicholas Cirillo, we are going to take a look at the swarming racial trait of rat folk, building around it. It's actually, I know I say this every week, but it's really good.
The series is called Mid-Maxing.
Anyway, if you're liking what you're seeing, like, subscribe, ding the bell. In about 26 days, I'll know what my finances look like. So I'll be able to afford an editor. So I'll be able to make content other than just this in actual plays. So thank you guys for your patience. We are at the tail end of it. And Patronage at an ATR gets you access to a Google Sheet that this character is mathed out on for you. Anyway, today, this episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by Zanroar. We have a lot of newest patrons, and I forget who I have or haven't shouted out. Turns out seeing realtors takes a lot of your spoons away, so if I missed you, just scream at me. And I guess on that note, if you like this style of video, also scream at me so I know and can repeat it. But in any case, I'm rambling. Thank you for your support, my friend. Here we go. Okay, so in case you missed the boat about the rat folk, the swarming racial trait says that up to 2 rat folk can share the same square at the same time. If 2 rat folk in the same square attack the same foe, they are considered to be flanking their foe as if they were in 2 opposite squares. Of course, if you're flanking someone, that means you have a +2 to hit them. Of course, if you're a rogue, that means sneak attack is online. So optimizing around this trait seems a pretty big no-brainer to me. This also assumes that we're going to have 2 characters on the board that are built exactly the same. How you do that is up to you. I'm not going to say take leadership because I don't know if your GM is going to allow that. I'm not going to say go talk to your friends because I don't want you to force your friends to be your swarming buddy. But
I mean, just show them this video, and I feel like they'll want to be your swarming buddy.
Kinda, yeah. You're not wrong. I definitely, in a lot of my games, when I've done this, it's been because we had a GM and 2 players, and so the players are all playing 2+ characters. Actually, this has happened at one of my tables. I had a player play a pair of rat folk monks that didn't exactly sneak attack, but it was still good. Anyway, we're rambling. Onwards, today's build, you knew you were gonna see it because I already said it. We're looking at 1 level of the Knife Master Rogue and 19 levels of the Sanctified Slayer Inquisitor. So I made the choice for the Inquisitor for a couple of reasons. First, the biggest problem with the Knife Master is the Knife Master does not get proficiency with the Knife Master's best weapon, the Kukri, in class. The Inquisitor, of course, is proficient with simple weapons plus the sacred weapon of their deity. The Inquisitor also has a little more stuff they can do in case your sneak attacking is not online. When in doubt, you still have magic and things. So you're not just here's a D3, haha. The Knife Master, of course, when they make a sneak attack with a dagger, karambit, kukri, punching dagger, star knife, or sword breaker dagger, they use D8s for their sneak attack damage, but D4s for everything else. Since we can pretty reasonably assume that we're going to have a flank all the time, we can pretty reasonably assume we're going to be hucking D8s at tables for most of the combat. The Sanctified Slayer trades out the things that I personally don't like about the Inquisitor or about D&D at large. Having a small pool of resources per day, aka an Inquisitor's Judgment, but that's just me. I hold on to those forever and ever and I'll never spend anything from them at all. In return for the studied target class feature of the Slayer and a smaller scaling sneak attack, as well as a couple of Slayer talents as well. For our traits, since we do have access to Divine Favor, Prayer, so on and so forth, Fate's Favored giving you a +1 on those, not the worst ever. And for your second trait, take whatever. Reactionary is always a great choice, but I don't want to sit here and just scream take reactionary every video. There's nothing that's super clutch for this build. The stat priority, we want to prioritize our dexterity because after the Agile enchantment, we will be attacking and damaging with it. Wisdom for our casting stuff. Con so we don't die. Intelligence slightly above strength because you probably use your int just a little more. Strength so you're not encumbered by your own stuff. Then charisma to the bottom because we're not using it at all.
And I feel like if you are the rogue in the party, you may end up being a skill monkey as well. So
Yeah, that's reasonable.
prioritizing intelligence is probably a good idea.
And the Inquisitor also gets a boatload of skills too. Our first level is 8+ int, and then it's 6+ int in skills for the rest of the way through. So certainly out of combat, you have a lot of things you can do. Gets even better if you have two characters who split their skills just a little bit. You could see really big coverage, really easy. Anyway, to the feats. Of course, the rogue gets weapon finesse for free at first level. Taxman cometh, and 2-weapon fighting getting us the extra attacks from offhand kukris means more d8s going off. Easy peasy. Double slice at level 3, assuming your GM will let you use your dexterity instead of your strength. Order of operations seems to indicate that if I've used dex, this should say, you normally add only half your dex. Add your dex bonus to damage with your offhand weapon. It's not as important as the sheer amount of d8s, but I mean, we got it, right? Why not? At 5th level, we'll take accomplished sneak attacker because, again, the Sanctified Slayer only ticks up sneak attack at 4th and every 3 levels thereafter. So grabbing an extra d6, an extra d8, means we stay caught up with the actual rogue, and the thing that we're trying to do is done better. 2-weapon defense was something I decided to pick up next because we're probably going to get attacked a lot, because we're not dipping monk to get our wisdom to our armor class, and the Inquisitor spell list is good, but it doesn't have your mage armor shield shenanigans. Giving yourself a shield bonus to AC could be the difference between life and death, and the other reason I picked the Inquisitor for this is because you're gonna have a character who is built to do what you do really well, and you're always gonna be flanking, which pointed straight at outflank to me. The Inquisitor gets teamwork feats and gets to treat the whole party like they have those teamwork feats, which is kind of weird when there's a second Inquisitor next to you who has the feats and is treating you as though you have the feats, but you actually have the feat. You get what I mean.
And you could always divvy up what teamwork feats you're each taking from your Inquisitor levels. This is just assuming the best version of what you would want to take.
Man, I did not even think about that. Oops. Fair enough. Improved 2-weapon fighting comes down as soon as we can get it for extra attacks, followed by one specific to the race, Sharptooth. Sharptooth gives us a 1d3 points of damage bite attack. Work with your GM on this one. I say this probably every time we talk about Knife Masters. This is doing the damage of a small dagger. Ergo, reasonably, you could make the argument that you should get d8 sneak attacks out of this. If not, then, it's still a boatload of d4s on top of a boatload of d8s.
So Magic Missile can cry its heart out.
After that, we are grabbing Double Bane, which is super key for our build. Another reason I like the Inquisitor. What's better than a bunch of d8s? A bunch of d8s with d6s slapped on top of them, since the Inquisitor can auto-bane their weapon and eventually get the big 4d6 bane. Double Bane says, you can apply your Bane to a second weapon you're wielding. While your Bane class feature is active, at the start of each of your turns as a free action, you choose whether to apply that ability to one weapon or the other or both. For each round it's going to 2, you're spending 2 rounds of Bane, so unfortunately our teeth are not going to be quite as cool as our kukris, but that doesn't mean we don't want to break epic DR with our kukris. And again, throwing an extra 4d6 every time we stab somebody looks good everywhere. Next, we'll take the weirdest feat in this build, Weapon Versatility. This requires weapon focus, which we're getting from our first Slayer talent. We grab the combat trick of the rogue and then grab weapon focus. This will allow you to, as a swift action, deal a different kind of damage, bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, with our normally slashing kukri. If your BAB is 5 or higher, it's a free action. This one feels super weird, and I don't like that we had to take it, but you'll see why in just a second. 2-weapon Ren next, since we're gonna probably hit a lot because we're gonna constantly be flanking. Throwing an extra d10 is kind of just the chip damage for if your d8s roll below average. But the icing on the cake here is deific obedience. Our Inquisitor's deity today will be the Imperial Lord Tanagar. Originally, I just Control F'd Kukri to see who would have access to the weapon I wanted. Fun fact, all of the Rixasha Immortals would give you a Kukri. Tanagar, in addition to having Kukri access and the weirdest obedience for this, find and observe a mouse or rat, From no more than 30 feet away, continue watching the mouse unseen for 100 breaths, catch the mouse and release it in an area where owls hunt is either the most masochistic or the most elitist thing your rat folk is doing, in return for a +4 sacred bonus on saving throws against effects that would hinder your sight or hearing, which actually is pretty widespread and versatile. The piece de resistance here, Hunter's Edge, the capstone of our boons. You gain sneak attack plus 3d6. This increase to sneak attack stacks with sneak attack damage you may have from other sources. Whenever you deal sneak attack damage with a piercing weapon, this is why we needed weapon versatility, and a huge miss, I think, since the deity's favorite weapon was a slashing weapon, you deal plus 2 points of damage per sneak attack dice. I don't think I need to show you the math to tell you how out of hand that can, I'm gonna show you the math, but I digress. For our teamwork feats, right out the gate we grab Precise Strike because, again, we're just stacking all the sneak attack damage on that we can. Then Outflank because we're always flanking. We're essentially playing Kingmaker right now.
Everyone attack it at once.
Everyone attack it at once and not have to worry about getting behind things. And since we're always going to have a +2 to hit, making that always a +4 seems like just straight up value for this character. Next, we're taking Rat Stack, which allows you to occupy the same square with up to 2 other creatures that also have this feat. If they also have Tunnel Rat, up to 4 can do it. This one's kind of just big sad prereq here. Though, admittedly, if you can get the whole squad to roll up Rat Folk, this would be even more exponentially scary. We're just grabbing it as a prerequisite for Rending Swarm. That gives us a +1 bonus on all melee damage rolls for each allied creature you share a square with that has this feat. Just a free +1 on all of the bajillions of attacks we're throwing down. And if 2 or more allies sharing a square have this feat, aka you and the carbon copy of yourself, and you hit the same adjacent creature in a round, they tear it in different directions, dealing additional damage at the end of the round, dealing 1d6 plus the highest strength modifier of all qualifying allies in the same square. Consider this just another d6 to jam in the giant pile of dice that we're gonna yeet at the table when we start stabbing stuff.
I think this one's also a reasonable one to argue that if you have something like an agile weapon, you should get to use your dex mod instead of your strength mod.
This build needs about 1 billion swift actions worth of setup time. Welcome to Pathfinder. But snapping flank once you're set up says that whenever you're flanking with an ally who also has this feat, says whenever you're doing what this build wants to do, whenever you're hugging your best friend and stabbing the dragons to death, as a swift action you can make a bite attack against the opponent you and your ally are flanking, which again, picture if you're playing IRL, your entire dice bag, dump it out, pick out all the d4s, throw them at the table, that's what you're doing. That's why this build works even if your GM wants to let the Knife Master do d4s with the bite attack. It's still gonna end up being about 1 billion d4s. Next up, you knew you'd see it. Coordinated Charge. When an ally with this feat charges a creature that is no further away from you than your speed, should be pretty easy given the fact that you guys are stuck together for life. You can, as an immediate action, charge that creature. Given that if you move 5 feet away from the other rat folk, suddenly all of this damage falls off really fast. This one seems pretty clutch for me, and also it's just really good. For the Slayer talents, we will grab Combat Trick for weapon focus as soon as possible, then Powerful Sneak, which will allow us to treat all of our 1s as 2s when we're rolling a bajillion damage dice, then Greater 2 Weapon Fighting for the extra attack. So far as your training enchantment stuff goes, Combat Reflexes looks really good on Outflank because, oh yeah, forgot to tell you, whenever you score a critical hit with Outflank, it provokes. That's one of the reasons we want to run around with Keen Kukris that are dealing d8s. D3 plus Dex is like a thing, I guess, sure. But when that D3 plus Dex has 1 billion D8s stapled to it, and then also another D3 plus X plus 1 billion D8s that could cause you to go off, things can get out of hand really, really quickly. Hammer the Gap also hangs out in the training section too. Getting a scaling damage buff for the in total when hasted 9 attacks means we're adding +1, +2, +3, +4, so on and so forth every time we connect. One thing I didn't realize I hadn't taken when I built this build though is there's no Piranha Strike on this build. There's no power attack because we just don't need it. And you'll see why in a sec. Do you think I missed anything? One of the reasons I wanted to bring her on this is she plays more 3.5 than I do, and has played more rogues than I do.
I do like rogues. I mean, there are some 3.5 feats that I would add. Things like Craven can help you add your level to damage as well. And so if there is a feat in here that you're just like, I don't know how much I like that or like need that, it does hurt your ability to save against fear effects, which is, you know, not the best, but it does mean that you're dealing an extra point of sneak attack damage per character level per attack.
Which is terrifying. And
yeah.
Also, we're wisdom based, and also we have Stalwart on an Inquisitor.
Exactly.
And also Will's our best save. So, like, if your GM is allowing 3.5, certainly when one of your capstone combat feats, like weapon versatility or 2-weapon rend, goes on the training enchantment, you could pick up Craven and just tear the board apart. So far as our key magic items and stuff, I grabbed an Inquisition with our Inquisitor, specifically the Heresy Inquisition, which is available to literally every core deity, so I'm pretty sure we can cheat this on an Imperial Lord. Getting your Wisdom instead of Charisma when making Bluff and Intimidate checks is fine, I guess, and the Bestow Curse obviously could cause a little bit of chip damage in the form of oops, your con is down by 6. But the reason I like it the most is Blessed Infiltration. When you make a bluff, diplomacy, or stealth check, you're rolling with advantage a number of times per day equal to your wisdom bonus. Since we're small, we have a buff on our stealth checks, since invisibility is on our spell list, and we're dex-based, so our stealth is going to be through the roof, but that doesn't mean we want to roll it too. Rolling with advantage means 51% of the time you're rolling a 15 or better, which should almost always make sure you're not caught at the bad times. We definitely want to make sure we have both the Keen and Agile enchantment, otherwise we kind of just fall apart. We want to add our dex to damage, and we want to make sure when we're rolling 15 to 20s, we're helping our friends go ham. Tiger's Hide, probably one of my favorite items for this build. Gives you Pounce, which again, when you're swinging 9 attacks being hasted, means things are gonna die really quick, and it helps us in the first round of combat just shut somebody's mouth who's really scary. I'm kind of bummed it wasn't on our spell list. Seems like a missed opportunity if you ask me, but get Sense Vitals on a wand, and get that wand to have the highest caster level you possibly can, and we can tag 5 more, I want to say D6, but I guess I'll say sneak attack dice because it's so varied on this character. Then last but not least, the Bane Baldric. Fun fact, I have zero clue what a Baldric is, but if the wearer of this chest slot item, if the wearer of this slotted item that you literally put nothing else here for, is an Inquisitor, they're treated as 5 levels higher when using Bane and Greater Bane. Since our Banes last for a number of rounds per day equal to our Inquisitor level, getting an extra +5 means we don't just Nova to death. Time for the damage math. At the end of the day, if we started with 20 dex, and you probably want to with this one, +5 from leveling, +5 from your book, +6 from your belt, you end up in total with a 36 dex or a mod of 13. This could be even scarier with a permanent reduced person. We got a +4 all the time from Outflank, and a +7 from a +5 Kukri that's baned out. Studied Target gives us a buff to attack and damage. At the end of the day, a +5, a +2 from charging because Tiger's Hide, then a -2 from 2-weapon fighting, and a -2 from powerful sneak, but a +1 from weapon focus kukri, and a +1 from haste. I always forget haste does that. I think every character I've played in my career who has been hasted has not added that +1, and I'm mad about it. It means you're swinging 3 attacks at a +40, 2 at 35, your bite as a swift and a standard coming down at 32, then 2 attacks at 30. Of course, you're gonna need a billion rounds of swift actions to kick on all your banes, to activate all your magic items, to do the thing you want to do, but like, you're stealth based. You have the time. Make sure the barbarian doesn't kick down the door, or if they do, make sure there's something left when they're done vital striking to death for you to go stab. Anyway, a little baby kukri does 1d3 points of damage, plus 13 from your dex. Add 7 more from a +5 Bane weapon, add 5 from Studied Strike, 4d6 from the Inquisitor's Big Bane, then in total, from Accomplished Sneak Attacker, the Knife Master, Sense Vitals, our Owl Overlord, and all the other sources of sneak attack rolled together, at the end of the day we can throw 17 d8s at somebody, treating our 1s as 2s. Then +2 per sneak attack dice means +34. See why we didn't take Power Attack? We just don't need it. Speaking of just don't need it, honestly, you could probably get rid of Rending Swarm and 2-weapon Rend by the end of the day, because the 1d6 plus, I'm assuming you get to a mod of 1 on your strength, probably. If your GM isn't letting you do dex with Rending Swarm, then a d10 plus 19, which I did do dex and a half on just for funsies, seems like very insignificant chip damage at this point. Then take that times 7 for 7 attacks with a Kukri means, on average, you're gonna hit for 1,024 damage. The bite is a little more sad because you're only doing it with 2 attacks, and again, you don't get the big bane, but a d3 plus 13, plus 5 from your plus 5 Amulet of Mighty Fists, then 5 more for Studied Strike, and 17 d4s, treating 1s as 2s. 34 again from Tanagar times 2 means you're doing 186 damage. And again, as always, big shout out to Mahogany for doing all my math for me on this one. So in total, you're doing, on average, about 1,210 damage with this character in terms of a billion d8s thrown at the table. Then double that from your friend who's doing the same thing. At the end of the day, you can end up with 2,420 hit points worth of d8s thrown around on average with this character. To put that in perspective, the biggest creature in Pathfinder, the Elephant of Jondelay, only has 740 hit points and only has an armor class of 50, which I suppose means the last attacks have to literally roll natural 20s to hit, but the first attacks look pretty good. Basically, the goal is just take these 2 characters and point them anywhere, and then that thing dies. I also really like this build because you don't need to be around the other side or do any special shenanigans to get your sneak attack off.
You're just a couple of twin lightning bruisers.
Yeah, exactly. But if there's 8 people, if you're flanked, if you're ganged up on, you have sneak attack on everybody. You don't have to do any weird math or anything. They just literally have to be in your threat range. That's all it takes to get this to go off, which is what makes this so scary. I also really like this as like a boss monster as well for that same reason, or like a plot boss monster if your party likes to use summons and animals and armies and things, because they're just always good whenever they want to be good.
Just the one thing to watch is that you don't let your CMD fall off too hard, because obviously if you can just be kicked around and separated from your buddy, this build is just shut down.
5 foot of rope.
Yeah, just tie each other. Just tie yourself to your buddy. It's a good time.
Does that work? Can you do it? I guess you could.
And then you just get hucked together and it's fine.
Because you still have your sneak attack damage. Yeah, I don't hate that. Yeah, sure. 5 foot of rope, 5 foot of chain. It doesn't... What? Sovereign glue. There you go. That's the key magic item for this build. Stay stuck to your friend, but that's all the time we have for today. Thank you all for watching. If you want to see more like this, let me know. And I guess I'll go ahead and say it here now. I hope everybody out there is taking care of themselves. We're doing this primarily today because we're in the same room right now. I know things are super spoopy out in the world. Be good to each other and be kind to each other. Next week on Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit, I'm taking like 3 requests and throwing them together. Lots of folks have asked I talk about firearms more. Lots of folks have asked I talked about Magi more. And I got a request to optimize around the spell Arrow Eruption. Yes, rules is written that doesn't work with firearms, but like all of the old texts, now I sound like a grognard, don't interact with firearms, so I'm assuming they will. So next week, gun magic it is. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.